see significant change. But then, right within the parts of the city that we frequent, we found huge changes to the visual landscape. So we thought we'd better start filming right away, or we're going to miss things. We didn't have a clear conception of the scope of the film at that point. But within about 2-3 months, we realized that we couldn't restrict it to the metro. We thought initially that we'd have it only about the metro on NG Road, actually. Then we thought, no, it should be the metro in the whole city. And then, the construction of the metro is closely connected also to widening of roads, which is closely connected to private development that comes up in different parts of the city. So then we felt it's necessary to include all of those stories. Also, many of the activists who were working on the metro issue, they were also the same people working on the other issues. So it didn't make sense for us to not include.
Yeah, in a sense, it was a kind of, the metro was the entry point of us entering the story of the city. But in a way, it unraveled before our eyes the kind of interconnections, and which is why we have the multiple narratives, because you cannot disassociate one from the other. They're all part of this larger thing called a global city, world-class city, which goes into the making of it. And yeah, so.
And then also, because it was shot over such a long period of time, can you talk a little bit about sort of the challenges of sort of temporally, thinking about the subject of film, the evolution of what was happening?
You wanted to speak about that?
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting question because there are many challenges. One is actually us living through that time, with the camera and following it. That is one challenge, and which meant we were constantly in touch with people, and then so some of those stories lent themselves to like a sequential unfolding, like for instance Malini's house, because it just was happening at a slower rate. There were some things that happened, like Girija, she was gone the next day. So that was one thing. The other thing is to, in actually telling a story of the city, how does one bring in this temporal element without making it a linear kind of a, which we really struggled with. But I think finally we decided that we'll go back and forth. Because all of it is simultaneous. They're not like neat little things that happen. They're all happening together. So how do you tell a story that brings that sense of simultaneous chaos that's happening?
But I think our initial edit, before Obro came in, the editor, who I think contributed a lot, but before he came in, our initial edit, we had a full rough cut before that, was much more non-linear. We kept going back and forth, we kept jumping back and forth a lot more. But after he came in, I think he said, no, that won't do, and we kind of agreed with him. So.
And then, given all of the work that you've done with so many activists, with people who've lived there, and we discussed this very briefly before, is that can you think of what other ways maybe the state or the government could have approached some of these development issues, or I'm not sure how you want to sort of talk about development per se, but thinking about alternative ways, and then this sort of then stepping back and putting it in the larger context of things that are going on in India, large infrastructure projects that are being pushed through across the country. And like you were saying, you had sort of experiences of showing this in other parts of the world as well, and there has been a lot of resonance with what's been happening in Bangalore, elsewhere in the world. So if you could just reflect a little bit on what an alternate view of this would look like.
So, firstly, all the people are like Leo or Vijay or Vinay, all of them, they're not, the earlier chief minister dismissed them as greens, they as people who are not really, they don't really have the facts and they don't know enough about how to construct a city, but they're all architects, they're city planners, they're environmentalists, so they do have actually far more facts than many of the people in the metro, the BBMP that we met at least. They were invited to present a plan, but were never actually given a chance. Within a minute they were disposed of, and so they couldn't really present an alternative plan. They had many alternatives to each of the things that were being presented. They had many alternatives. So to the metro, for instance, the metro makes two turns like that, which apparently is extremely expensive to do, to make that one L-shaped turn and then another and then another and then back. And that's to and the Delhi Metro chief, who was the advisor on the Bangalore, he had suggested that they don't do that. Yeah. And Leonel presented that fact, but Mr. What's his name? Shivshelam just dismissed that, saying no, that won't do for us. There was no, that public consultation that was supposed to happen was a bit of a farce because nobody was actually listened to, nobody's opinion was actually taken into account. It's just that on record they can say we've had X number of public consultations and so many people agreed and now we can go ahead. So there are, the one is a monorail. Then, some of these things, it's not like there's an alternative that's needed. Avenue Road, there's no need to do anything. The alternative is to not do anything. Right. I mean, you don't go around widening a 400-year-old road with shops on both sides that are, at least 300 years old. And if you widen it, then all the shops are going to get destroyed. There's not a single shop that's going to be left. And then all of that is to save people on the other side of Avenue Road from reaching the airport like 10 minutes earlier. And the airport is in any case like an hour and a half away. So what difference does 10 minutes make? And most of the people who are on Avenue Road, the traders, are actually tenants. The people who run shops mostly in India are tenants. They're not shop owners. So they're not even going to get much compensation. They'll, even the gentleman who was running that, the clock shop, he got like 25,000 or something. And they didn't bother to actually even collect that money because the red tape involved is so much that they didn't bother. Because he was a tenant. His family had this shop for 70 years. But then, they get only like 25,000 shifting fees or something it's called. So I mean, there are alternatives and, you'll have to look at each of the interventions. And there are alternatives to each that they propose, but they were not listened to.
And the other thing is that, forget about alternatives. If they were to just do what they were doing, following the law, I mean, things would have been 100 times better. Following the law would also mean meaningful consultation with land losers, none of which was happening, as you saw in the film. And I mean, and that is only the tip. There were worse things that, we couldn't bring all of it in. But and it's just like a paucity and there's like a barrenness of imagination of, just having this, where the metro is just this metaphor for a city that's arrived. It's not really about...
and there are instances from, other parts of India as well of, bus transit being an alternative to the metro.
They've proposed all of those things. And some of those people had detailed plans and facts and figures. And in fact, this widening of Sheshadri Road, they said 5 years it will fill up and you can see it.
Within 2 years actually, go back. I mean, we've been trying to film that, but unfortunately now it's become a too late thing. So we were not able to get a proper angle. But within 2 years, it became as full up as before because there are bottlenecks in the city, unless you widen the whole city, in which case you don't have a city left. And you may as well throw the people out and you have any roads. But otherwise, it's not possible to, it's not practical to widen some roads and hope that traffic will be smooth on those roads. But the bus system was proposed by Katyani and Civic and Leo and Vijay. And the metro cost some 40 or 50,000 crores. And for a fraction of that cost, they could have improved the bus transport.
So it's really a case of not wanting to listen because you've made up your mind about something because there are other spin-offs from it.
Right.
So so there was no serious attempt at even wanting to know what could be done.
And you were saying you're trying to film what's happened. So are you continuing to work on this, or are you, are you building on this project?
Oh no.
Okay.
We stopped filming.
Okay, because I was wondering.
We stopped filming in 2013.
Okay.
So we finished a rough cut in. I mean, rough cut was earlier, but the final film was ready by 2014, October 2014.
So I was wondering if you're doing any sort of follow-up on this, because I'd be very
no, not for this film at least. I don't know.
I'm following it in other ways, but not with the film.
So I'm wondering if we can open it up to questions. Yeah, we have about 10 minutes, I think, for questions.
Thank you. I'm not following. Is this working? I can be loud.
That's fine.
So, I'm not following all of this, but I think that you have said that the law was not followed in much of this. That's terrible. And I'm particularly interested in what I would call the heritage house, this woman talking about the tiles in her house. She makes a statement that they paid to have the house demolished themselves. Were they paid for the property, and what about the other people? I mean, like, the other houses that were destroyed, were people adequately compensated for this?
Actually, some of the, for instance, the woman, Girija, who's standing in the, amidst the ruins of her house, she wasn't compensated at all. No, there were many people who were not compensated. But that was in the course of widening of roads. So there are multiple things happening, there are multiple narratives in the film. As far as Malini is concerned, she had to go to court, and her compensation was not commensurate with the value. And it wasn't even on par with her neighbors. And she still, the saga continues actually. And
Not just not on par, it's 1/5 of what the market value would have been, 1/5, yes.
on par with the neighbors. So she had to contest it multiple times, and so to cut a long story short, she was compensated many years hence after many litigations, and at a very, like Gautam said, 1/5 the value.
And many of the other people were not compensated at all?
But those were not the metro cases, those were the project of widening roads. So they were mainly lower income dwellings, shops that were not adequately compensated, and even with the metro, there are lots of cases pending about compensation, which is again not fair. And there are some cases where they've got good quote unquote compensation that was in the public, in media. So everyone thought that, wow, this is fantastic. The metro is being very fair. So.
But on the whole, I think the metro compensated better than the BBMP for road widening. For people who lost their homes because of the road in front of their house being widened, they lost out more than the people who lost their homes because of the metro.
And as Gautam had mentioned earlier, some of these were tenants who weren't compensated. Only the owners got compensated.
So the law in India doesn't protect a tenant against the government. It protects a tenant against the house owner. A private house owner can't evict her or his tenant, but if the government wants to acquire that property, the government pays very little. It's just some shifting fees or something. So there's a small problem with the law perhaps, but yeah. So that's.
When you say the government,
Actually,
Sorry.
should we? No, I just want to. Maybe we can take a couple of questions together,
Sure.
so that you guys can, just so everyone gets a chance to ask a bunch of questions. So,
Hi. Really a wonderful, powerful film. Thank you so much. Not so much a question, but actually a thought. And since what we are in many ways dealing in different parts of this country gets more or less confirmed by your film. One, of course, I think that this whole issue of whether development really looks at human beings as humans. It's, in fact, this form of development first has to reduce human beings to non-humans, which is now getting more and more confirmed with all the stuff that we are hearing from even this recent Pratibha Rani's famous bail plea to, of course, Anupam Kher's statements about roaches and vermins and viruses and bacteria. So I think that is now fairly well established in this country, that that of not allowing human beings to be human, and that non-human, to reduce it to that category is only when you can imagine and put through a development process like this. So that's really very powerfully comes across from both your film. The other thing is, I think that once and for all, I think it needs to be settled that law is not the register for justice. Actually, it's actually because of the operations of law that we have a demand for justice. It works the other way around. And again, it's a brilliant confirmation of that in your film. So really, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
There's someone here who had a question as well. And this one.
No,
There's someone at the
can you
back.
hear me? Sorry. Hi. Wonderful film. I really enjoyed it, and I actually just wanted to say, not to talk really about the issue, which I think everybody is speaking about that, and we all know what the issues are. But just to also congratulate you for the form of your documentary, which I really thought was very, very interestingly put together. I really appreciated the soundtrack. I thought some of the images were just amazing, and I liked those little constructed bits, because it is an observational film, but there are all these constructed sequences which I thought were very interestingly put together. That one image will stay in my mind for a long time. You have that image of the little toilet, and this it's one of these buildings, and the toilet left there. And so some of it is actually quite amazing. And I also think that just to reiterate that the power of your film really comes out of this whole business of tracking something for so many years, which as documentary filmmakers, it's not really, I would use the word luxury, because I'm sure that all of us who make films and want to make films would like to have that luxury of being able to document something over a period of time. I know Rahul has done that. Your film, and it's so much more powerful because it's a film which is not just made parachuting into something and then moving out, which we are often forced to do because we don't have any other option. So just to say that these are just comments in appreciation.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Can I just say that luxury is partly as a result of the fact that we kept running short of money, so we had to do other things, and that kept delaying the end of the film. But yeah, we were able to, but some stories unfolded only after that period.
And I'm very glad you liked the form of the film. Also, we wanted to, our original title was Once Upon a Time, because we wanted to bring in this thing, a city as fiction, and we've used a little bit of reading out of fiction on Bangalore in the film. So it's there in the soundtrack.
Good morning. Yes, like everybody else, I thought that the film was spectacular. And also, I was going through these cycles of being, shocked and squirming in my seat because the office I work with is on Brigade Gateway. I'm like, that's my office. And
Okay.
and so I think it was an amazing film, and it just reminded me of all the things that we have seen similarly in other places. So I think this in some sense shows quite a bit of what is the norm, I would say, in India, of how large construction projects happen. I just wanted to check with you, because when you were doing research for this, have you come across any instances where things have gone right, where people have been adequately compensated, that due notice has been given? Because I think Ahmedabad was one place that I was researching, and very similar stories have unfolded there with their development. So,
Well,
Should we just take one last one in the back and then, because
I returned to Bangalore after many, many years to almost wonder whether my home was still there. And two underpasses had come in a place where one existed. And when I left Bangalore, I couldn't walk home from Queen's Road to Millers Road because it was unsafe. And today it is so crowded I can do it throughout the night and day. This is not to decry your film at all. This is not to, but I would like to suggest that, there are many films that are decrying road widening, and that is part of the trend. The hashtag today is hopefully human beings. But the people, unless they are willing to give up their concept of what constitutes public mode of transport versus public mode of transport, unless these shop vendors do not think that fancy luxury cars are their status, and unless business people or SHOs and government officials and babus are unwilling to give up their mode of transport for something which is more feasible, maybe we need to also produce something for them. This may appeal to us, but it is the people who must, many more people who want to take the cars. You'll have a vendor, but he'll want a car, So he will be crowding the road as much as your appeal to him to widen the road. So that's really what I want to say.
So, well, I'd say it depends on who the people are. I mean, 3,000 people came out on the street protesting the metro. No, I know, but you can't, you don't usually have 1 billion people coming out on the street. I mean, you do. 1 million people came out in London in protest against the Iraq war, but it's happened only once. In a city like Bangalore, which tends to be laid back and where very few people come out in protest, it was a landmark protest, I think, because like 15,000 people came out in support of Rohit Vemula in Delhi. So I think the people are actually not for this kind of development. It depends on which people you're talking of, because in spite of the people not being in favor, I think the government pushes ahead for a certain kind of change, certain kind of development. And it's the fact that actually they don't really consult the people. I mean, who are the people? I mean, all of us are the people. Sorry?
Ma'am, I think, we can't really judge and say whether they want the right or wrong thing, but what is very visible to us is that the state in all its wisdom and power is not acting in ways that it should as a responsible. We don't know, we can't make that, I don't feel comfortable judging whether it's right or wrong.
I was wondering if you wanted to address his question, and then we may have to
Yeah.
take this offline. Yeah, I think we're done because.
So, you want the
actually, we followed stories that have not gone well, because there was also a moment from 2018 to 8 to 12 where there was a complete uproar in the city about things not going okay. So I'm sure there are other instances, we've not followed them, but
we didn't come across them.
We didn't, in our journey we didn't come across. And there are some things that have happened that, also lots of things off the record we also heard about how compensation is arranged, etc. So we really didn't go there.
But in the Delhi Metro, apparently, there was one instance where they actually changed the routing because of public protest. In Bangalore, I don't think there was a single instance.
No.
I'm afraid we're going to have to close it right now, but thank you very much.
So Gautam and Usha are here.
Yeah.
So there's coffee, tea outside. Maybe we could continue this
Yeah.
conversation. We're waiting for 10 minutes. We have to start the next one. So sorry to do this.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for
very
coming.
much.
Thank you.